Domain and range is a concept that a lot of students struggle with, so I'm going to go through a couple examples real quick. By far the easiest is when they give you just like coordinates. It doesn't really matter what they are. Okay, so domain refers to all the x coordinates, and range refers to all the y coordinates. So if you wanted to answer this question, what's the domain, what's the range of these three coordinates? Well, your domain is all the x's, so -3, 4, 5. And your range is all the y's, so 2, 1, and -11. I'm going to put them in a better order though, least to greatest. And that's all you have to do for coordinates. Now they may also do some things where they give you like points on a graph. So all right, so you might see something like this and your teacher might ask you, what's the domain and range of this function? Well, all you have to do, I find the easiest, is to just go put the coordinates. And then it's exactly the same as before, where your x is all your answers for your domain. So -6, 1, and 2. And your range is all the y's, so 0, 1, and 4. So those are probably the easiest scenarios you'll be presented with. Now, where it gets a little trickier is when you start talking about actual functions. So um, let's try something like this. All right, you might see something like this and your teacher might ask, what's the domain and the range? Well, here's how I do it. When you start talking about domain, you're only supposed to look at these numbers. And you always go left to right. So what I mean by that is I ask myself, how far left does this red line go? So the furthest left would be about here. That's at -8. Now when I write this though, I have to realize that this is a closed circle. So it needs to be included in your domain as a bracket. So -8 would have a bracket. Now you ask yourself, how far right does it go? Well, here's how far right it would go. So -2. And notice that at -2, it is an open circle. So that's when I use parentheses. So that would be the domain of this red line. Now for range, let me kind of clean this up a little bit. That way I don't confuse you. All right. For range, it's kind of the opposite. So before you were only looking at these x values. Well, now for range, you're only allowed to look at these y values. And kind of similar with left to right, range is low to high. So the first thing you do is you ask yourself, how low does this line go? Well, this would be the lowest that it goes, right? So -3. And notice, just like before, it's an open circle. So I'm going to use a parentheses there. And then when you say how high does it go, well, this would be the highest that it goes. So 6. And notice that it had a closed circle at 6, so that's when I used the bracket. All right, I'm going to do one more example. Let's do something like this. All right. So just like before, domain, I'm asking myself how far left, how far right. So how far left it goes would be here. That's at -8, and it's a closed circle. So I use a bracket. How far right it goes would be this. Well, this arrow means that this guy's going to continue going down and over forever. So how far right it goes, if you think about this x-axis, infinity would be if you kept going right. So I'm going to go right until infinity. And on infinity, you always use a parentheses. All right, now for the range of this, how low it goes comes first. So this arrow going down forever would mean it goes down to -infinity. And I use a parentheses for that. And how high it goes would be this circle up here that's at 7. Remember, I'm only supposed to look at these numbers for range. That's how people get in trouble on domain and range. They start thinking about range and they're looking at the x-axis. You're going to get it wrong if you do that. So how high it goes would be 7, and remember it has a closed circle, so I use a bracket. And that's very